Welcome to Heart Speaks. Today, a new story that won't leave you indifferent. She woke up at 4 in the morning to the sound of rain tapping against her window and that strange feeling that someone was standing just beyond the door. Lucille had always lived with ghosts. Not the kind that haunt, but the kind that linger. Voices, scents, and the unfinished words of those she never had the courage to listen to. She restored old letters for a living in a tiny workshop on Rue Saint-Paul. Between antique shops and a wine cellar that smelled of oak and memory, Lucille loved precision, silence, and maybe that's why she almost forgot what warmth felt like. That night, everything changed. A small parcel appeared by her door. No return address. Inside, a faded envelope. A black and white photograph from 1953. And a note that read, Pour Lucille, le dernier secret. For Lucille, the last secret. It couldn't be. She was 34. The photo was 70 years old. The next morning, she took it to an old antiques dealer, Bastien, a man who always knew more than he was willing to say. This photo paper, he murmured, was used by the French army. Look, the man's badge, reconnaissance. He looked closer. And this, the handwriting. You see the way the M curls? It's from the 1950s. Lucille, do you know who sent this? She shook her head. He sighed. Then maybe someone knows more about your family than you do. That evening, Paris glowed under the drizzle. Streetlights shimmered on wet cobblestones, and Lucille studied the photo again. Behind the couple, she noticed a sign, Le Pont des Âmes, a cafe that no longer existed. She searched the archives. It had burned down in 1954, the same year an officer named Henri Moreau disappeared. When she looked into the mirror that night, something in her reflection made her pause. The line of the jaw, the eyes, a resemblance to the man in the photo. She opened the letter again. If you're reading this, it means the story is ready to end. My name is Henri Moreau. If fate is fair, you are my granddaughter. I left behind something I could never return. Find it at the old cafe on Montmartre, where the song was cut in half. She barely slept. Paris woke up with her. Montmartre was quiet that morning, like an old theater after the last applause. The cafe was gone. Only the faint trace of its name remained on the crumbling wall. She ran her hand over the stone, feeling the ghost of letters beneath the plaster. Le Pont des Âmes. A man nearby was sketching the building. He looked up. Beautiful ruin, isn't it? I'm looking for something that doesn't exist, she said softly. Then you're in the right city, he smiled. I'm Gabriel. He was an architect, drawing the buildings Paris forgot to remember. When she showed him the photograph, he went pale. My grandmother had this picture. The woman's name was Eloise. She sang here, and the man, he never came back from the war. What happened to her? She waited. Every year she brought flowers here and spoke to the wall as if he could hear her. Lucille stared at the photo again. Maybe this was what Henri meant. The thing he never returned. Love, frozen mid-song. The next day, they managed to enter the basement of the old cafe, now city property. The air was heavy, filled with dust and old whispers. In one corner, half buried in brick, they found a rusted metal box. Inside, a small package wrapped in an old silk scarf, and within it, a vinyl record. The label read, Héloïse, dernière chanson, 1954. Lucille didn't own a turntable, but Gabriel did. That evening, they sat by his window, overlooking Sacré-Cœur, and placed the needle gently. The crackle of static. Then, a woman's voice. Soft, crystalline, haunted and tender all at once. Mon amour, si le monde s'éteint, je te retrouverai dans la lumière. My love, if the world fades away, I'll find you in the light. At the end of the song, a man's voice broke through. This is for you if I don't come back. Lucille didn't move. Tears slid down her face silently. The song was not hers, and yet it felt like it had been waiting for her all along. Gabriel pulled out an old archive book. In it, a note about a woman rescued from the fire in 1954, sent to a monastery outside Paris. Her name, Héloïse Moreau. They drove there the next morning. The abbess led them through a quiet garden and said, she lived here many years. Before she passed, she left a box to be given to her family if they ever came. Inside, letters, music sheets, photographs. One picture showed a little girl, barely 2 years old, with Lucille's eyes. On the back, for my granddaughter. If music returns, then so have we. That evening, they sat by the Seine. Paris shimmered with that fragile kind of beauty that only comes after rain. Maybe it's all coincidence, Lucille whispered. Maybe, Gabriel said, or maybe it's an echo. Some lives don't end, they just wait for someone to listen. She looked at him, and in his gaze was the same quiet light from the record. And for the first time in years, Lucille wasn't afraid of silence. Weeks passed. In her workshop, a new project arrived. A set of damaged music sheets. The handwriting was familiar. Héloïse, chanson pour toi. Signed, Henri. Lucille restored the song, and Gabriel helped her record it anew. They played it at a small cafe on Montmartre, rebuilt where the old one once stood. People didn't know the story, but when the melody filled the room, something in their eyes said they felt it too. Lucille sang softly, and the city listened. It was not a performance. It was closure. She no longer feared her ghosts, because now she understood. Some ghosts don't come to haunt. They come to remind us that love still echoes. Thank you for being with us. You've been listening to a story from Heart Speaks. Until next time, and remember, always let your heart speak.